Looks like we have folks in the room, so we'll get started. Well, thank you and welcome. My name is Brian Hall. I'm a Senior Vice President at the Greater Cleveland Partnership, where I'm the Executive Director of our Equity and Inclusion Division. And I want to thank Global Cleveland for inviting me to moderate this panel, The Diversity of International Migration in Northeast Ohio, and how to make Cleveland the most internationally welcoming city in the world. This is part of the Sister Cities Conference that we are delighted to have here in Cleveland. I haven't been able to get to all of the events, but I had the chance for the opening and welcoming yesterday, and it was just very, very impressive, and the number of people from around the world who are tuned in. So we're delighted today to bring this panel. I want to begin by thanking our sponsors. We have Platform Brewery, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, the Supply Side Group, Ulmer and Berne, Rotary Club of Cleveland, Eaton, Taiwan Sister Cities, CIP USA, Margaret Wong and Associates, Team Neo, Peace Corps, and 12 Literary Arts. Without them, this would not happen, and so we're very thankful for what they've done to help bring the spotlight to our city and to allow us to partner with our global partners around the world. I'm going to begin with a brief introduction of our panelists. If you're looking at the schedule, unfortunately, Marcello Fantoni will not be with us today due to a matter that could not be avoided, but we will have a roaring conversation just the same. We've got a great set of panelists. I'll begin with Abby. Abby, where did I put your document? I knew I would do this. Let me just get my papers in order. Okay, so I'll start with, hey, Joann, you joined us. Good to see you. I'll start with Joann. I'll start with, no problem. We just started. Joann Szczotka. Joann is the Community Relations Officer for USCIS District N12. N12 serves the states of Ohio, Pennsylvania, Delaware, West Virginia, Indiana, and Kentucky. And Joann has been with the agency since its inception in 2003. She's held the positions of Immigration Service Officers, Analyst, Immigration Service Officer, Analyst, and since 2017 as the Community Relations Officer. We're delighted to have you and to hear from you. David Leopold is a nationally recognized immigration reform advocate, writer, public speaker who has been widely recognized for his work on immigration law and policy. He is the current group leader of the Immigration Law Group at Ulmer and Berne and serves as the immigration policy consultant and counsel to DHS Watch, a project of America's Voice. He is the former president and general counsel of the American Immigration Lawyers Association and has received the AILA's 2012 Edith Lowenstein's Memorial Award for Excellence in Advancing the Practice of Immigration Law. He has been named by ABC News and Univision as one of the top immigration experts to follow on Twitter. Welcome, David. Scott Simmons. Scott has been with the Cleveland Clinic since 2006. They had a small event there yesterday and is currently responsible for the development and execution of the clinic's enterprise-wide strategy for recruitment of physicians and advanced practice providers. Prior to his current role, Scott led the global physician recruitment strategy for the Cleveland Clinic, Abu Dhabi, a 490-bed hospital in the United Arab Emirates. He lived in Abu Dhabi for 3 years, where he built and led a team of 25 professionals from 15 different countries. Scott continues to support recruitment planning for Cleveland Clinic's global growth, which includes its new hospitals under development in Shanghai, China. Abby Bruell. Abby, I have lost your page. So, I'm going to call it audible. Oh, no, here we go. Just at the bottom of the page. Abby Bruell recently joined the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants in Cleveland as the field office director after having spent over a decade working in international humanitarian assistance For the past several years, she was based in New York City, leading policy and advocacy for concern worldwide and advocating on the world's worst and largest refugee producing humanitarian crisis. That's a mouthful. Prior to that, she worked on the humanitarian policy and practice team at Interaction, a consortium of US-based humanitarian and development NGOs in Washington, D.C. And we had the pleasure of all meeting a few days ago to have a chat. So we're going to jump right into the questions. Thank you so much for all being here. Abby, I'm going to start with you. I'd love to hear some of your perspective. I got too many papers here. Here we go. So tell me, Abby, where have most of the refugees in Cleveland come from over the last 15 years, and how are the number of refugees we get determined? You might also add to that, and why do we want refugees here?
Sure. Well, thanks so much, Brian, and thanks to my panelists, and of course, thanks to Global Cleveland for asking me to be part of this panel, and of course, all of the sponsors. So Cleveland has a really rich history when it comes to refugees and immigrants. I mean, it was a city built by refugees and immigrants, and it continues to be one of those cities. In the past 10 years, I think the majority of the arrivals, at least for Ohio and Cleveland, have been Afghanistan, Ukraine, Nepal and Bhutan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and of course, in recent years, Syria as well. Northeast Ohio in general has, in the past decade, has resettled over 8,500 refugees. And Ohio is increasingly resettling a higher number of refugees. And we currently rank 6th in the nation for resettlement. So Ohio writ large is, incredibly welcoming of refugees. And of course, Cleveland is there too. Just one thing to note though, I mean, it's definitely, and so of the total number of refugees in the entire world, so right now, according to UNHCR, there's 46 million refugees that's just registered that we know of. So there's probably a lot more. And just to say, half of those are under the age of 18. 73% of refugees are in neighboring countries. And in the last year, 107,000 refugees have been resettled to 26 countries. So that's about 0.4%. And then if you think about in the United States, this year we've resettled a little over 9,000 refugees, so in the entire world, and that is 0.03% of the total refugee population out there. The way that numbers are determined is through something called the presidential determination that happens every year. In the past couple of years, that number has been quite a bit lower. This year, the presidential determination, for example, was 18,000. So we hit just about 9,000 as we close out the end of the fiscal year. So Happy New Year to everyone. And in previous administrations, it's been as high as over 100,000 per year. So still just a drop in the bucket when it comes to the number of refugees actually globally. We're still waiting on the presidential determination for the fiscal year 2021, and hopefully we'll have that before the election, but it could happen after the election as well. And so it's kind of anyone's guess right now. But just in general, I would say, as I was saying, like for Cleveland has been incredibly welcoming. It's been that city that has been built by refugees and immigrants. Of course, the populations look a little different now than they did in the past, but everyone's still kind of doing the same thing, and everyone finds it a very welcoming city. And we all know that refugees add a lot of value and contribute significantly to the local economies and to the communities. They're owning markets, restaurants. They work in our hospitals. I'm sure Scott has come across many of our clients that have been resettled that are working in the clinic or UH or what have you. And they're also, you know, they're contributing and they're paying taxes and they're adding, you know, that rich texture to what we know and think of as Cleveland. So it's a really interesting time to be in this work. But, you know, I think for all of us, it's what makes Cleveland, Cleveland, right?
Yep. So they bring value to our region through the talents and skills that they bring, and oftentimes the hard work and work ethic that helps advance our region. So Joann, tell me, what does a USCIS liaison do? How can you help immigrants? And how's your field office handled the pandemic?
Thank you. Thanks for letting me join today. So as a community relations officer for the district, I like to go out and we can send other people also to do presentations on how to obtain a green card, or once you have a green card, how do you renew it, how to become a naturalized citizen, or any other topic that may be immigration related. Most of the information is available, of course, on our website. But I understand that people would like to hear or feel human interaction to get more information, obviously. For the pandemic, our offices were shut from late March till June, and they have reopened, although we are not at 100 capacity work-wise. We are working on doing that by the end of this year. Also, we are conducting virtual interviews. You're only allowed to come to the office if you have an appointment scheduled with a notice. Info passes, which is where you come up to the counter to talk to someone, those have to be scheduled through our contact center. So we're trying to ensure that there's social distancing between us and the applicants and anyone else within the office.
So Joann, how have naturalizations been impacted as a result of the pandemic?
So Ohio is exclusively Ohio federal courts have exclusive jurisdiction for naturalization. So it's up to them whether or not naturalization ceremonies are held. They do allow us to do administrative ceremonies, which we have been doing since back in June. And luckily, the Cleveland office is up to date on all their backlog for those people who wanted to become citizens. There was a little caveat, though, because the courts had not opened up until, I believe, 2 weeks ago, maybe. Those people who requested name changes were delayed, as the federal or any court itself are the only ones that can permit a name change. Us as an agency cannot do so. It has to go through the court system. So those cases were delayed in those reasons.
Great, thanks. David, so you're an immigration attorney, and that means you touch this work in every corner that everyone will talk about today. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the policies that are creating challenges or opportunities for the work that's being done around the Zoom screen.
Sure, I'd be happy to, and thank you for having me. Thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. What we do, basically what we do is, as immigration attorneys here, is we represent a number of different sectors. Businesses, large and small, healthcare institutions, manufacturing, large and mid-size, all across the gamut. We represent families, people seeking to reunify with loved ones overseas, or marriage, our fiancés, things like that. We also represent people who are subject to being removed or deported from the United States, and people who are also turned around at the border or at the consulates overseas. A substantial part of what we do, or what I do, is policy consulting. I work very closely, and this is public, so I'm not giving away private knowledge, with America's Voice in Washington, D.C., advising them as counsel in their DHS Watch project, which keeps track of a number of the regulations and guidance and proclamations that have come out of the White House over the last several years. And creates a narrative or discusses these regulations in the context of the law and explains them to members of Congress in Capitol Hill. So in that context, we're involved, in a very comprehensive way in immigration law and policy. Now, you ask me what are the major policies that we're dealing with. I don't have 5 hours to speak today, and I think the program is only a few days long, so I don't think I have enough time to go over. I'm not trying to be funny. There are 752 regulations or guidance memoranda that have changed the course of how immigration is enforced and how it affects families.
So David, maybe I could pose a question to you just a little bit differently. Are there policies being advocated for that you think would enhance and support the flow of immigration to our country?
Well, of course, there certainly are, but to get there, we're going to have to revamp a lot of the policies in place. Let's just start with public charge, which affects families pretty directly. There's a public charge rule that was put in last year, and what that means is that it cuts out, makes it extremely difficult for families to reunite in the United States because it asks for a daunting proof that somebody will not one day somehow maybe sort of ever approach public benefits. It does two things. It cuts a lot of people out that shouldn't be cut out, and it also scares and intimidates people from seeking public benefits like child aid or other benefits for American citizen children that they're entitled to. It's being litigated in the courts, so that's how it's being challenged. It's being litigated in the courts right now. There was an injunction on it. The injunction was lifted, so people who are applying for green cards based on family tie or even based on an employment tie must deal with the daunting public charge rule. So that's one rule that really has sort of transformed what immigration looks like to families, and I'm happy to explain that in greater detail. The others really are the travel bans. I mean, several days into the administration banned Muslims from the United States. They couched it in terms of national security, but effectively banned Muslims, mostly Muslim nations. The first iteration of that ban, which went into effect in late January 2017, was successfully challenged in the courts. The administration ultimately had to come up with a watered down version of a travel ban, which remains in place today. The COVID-19 crisis and pandemic, the tragedy that's the 200,000 plus Americans that have died and the million across the world that have perished. This country has set up bans for people coming in from Western Europe, from the UK, from Ireland, from Brazil, and our country. We are now not welcome even in Canada. Americans are not welcome in many places overseas because of the ravage of COVID-19 in the United States. So those are another set of proclamations. I would say that also the restrictive, the much more restrictive adjudications or deciding of business petition visas has really put a burden on American businesses trying to create jobs for U.S. workers here in the United States. So there are a myriad of policies coming out of this administration. And another important one is refugees, which I know Abby knows full well. The refugee quotas have been slashed down to levels, 18,000, I think, was this year, the lowest level we've seen in decades. America is not accepting people who are fleeing persecution, who are fleeing horrific violence, people who are fleeing dictators. We're just turning them away. And not only that, the administration has used the COVID epidemic to simply turn people away without even asking questions about whether or not they're in fear of persecution. It's a very serious issue that's out there. And in terms of internal asylum regulations and asylum law, this administration has all but obliterated it from the United States jurisprudence without changing a word of the law. Congress has not changed a word of the law, but what they've done is reinterpreted the applicable, administrative rules such that women are no longer protected from domestic violence. Women and children are no longer protected from gang violence, vicious gang violence. It is extremely difficult for somebody to get asylum in the United States, even when they have evidence of being abused and persecuted and tortured. So it's a new day in this country right now, at least for the moment. And much of this can be corrected, but it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of perseverance. So that's really sort of the state of where we are today. I could go on and on, but I know that we don't have all that much time.
You've done a great job of outlining in a high level the challenges, and they do sound like, as you said, there are a myriad of them. Scott, they've got to be impacting the work that you do in recruiting. Tell us a little bit about where you recruit from. How many professionals does Ohio hire from abroad on an average year? And why is it even important that we are recruiting from outside the United States?
All right, thanks, Brian. Now you see why we work with David. I mean, he knows what he's talking about. It's awesome. But it's an honor to be on this panel with all of you. People who really work and help people every single day. It's impressive. We recruit. You mentioned earlier in the intro our growth in our global reach for Cleveland Clinic, and UAE, we're building in London, we're building in China, we've got affiliations around the world. We're in South Florida, Las Vegas, we're all over now, and it continues to grow. So we recruit from everywhere. We recruit from the entire United States, we recruit from around the world to all of those international locations. It's critical to us. Very simply, Cleveland Clinic wants to hire the best and the brightest, and we know that the best and brightest aren't all in the United States. They're all over and around the world. There's an enormous pool of smart, skilled, eager people all over the world who want to have great opportunities, and that's what we're trying to provide. So why are we out there recruiting globally? It's that's where a lot of the smart people are. So that's why we do it. So we're hiring, the challenge of directly hiring internationally into the United States is difficult, especially today. David outlined a lot of the issues and a lot of the challenges, but we're still bringing in, probably 30, 40 a year direct external into Cleveland. But it's not just the direct hires of physicians and others. We look at the full pipelines that are being developed that is bringing talent to Cleveland and to Northeast Ohio. For example, the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine is very intentional about trying to attract new students, medical students, to our medical school. There are 8 international students just in this year's class. In fact, they are, of those 8 in this year's medical school class, 2 from Canada, 2 from Ghana, 1 from Costa Rica, 1 from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, 1 from India, and 1 from Nigeria. That's very intentional. So these are people from around the world coming to Cleveland, establishing themselves. Our graduate medical education, we have almost 2,000 residents and fellows in training, one of the largest training programs in the country. Very high percentage of foreign medical graduates that come here to train. They come here and they stay anywhere from 3 years to 7 years and longer, depending on the training programs that they're in. They bring families, they bring children. So there's so much activity coming in that just the direct hires is a smaller fraction of that, but but the numbers are significant. Around the rest of Ohio, honestly, I can't speak to that. I honestly don't know, but I know that it's very intentional on our part. We're very active in it, and we will continue to be doing that. and again, it's important to look outside of Northeast Ohio and look outside, certainly, of the United States. Hiring for diversity is one of the key objectives, one of the cornerstones of our organization today and going forward for sure. I mean, we recognize very, very clearly as an organization, and certainly in the world that I'm in, which is the physicians and the advanced providers and the scientists, that diversity brings perspective. It builds trust, it breaks down barriers, and it opens people up by being around other people. And like I said before, very simply, there's a huge pool of talent around the world that we're trying to tap into. And it's not just to bring to Cleveland, it's for all of our entities around the world as those continue to grow. Plus, I mean, look at how work gets done today. The world's shrinking. Ease of travel, the enhanced technology. Used to be work from home, now it's work from literally anywhere, and including in the physician world. Virtual is growing very, very rapidly. Talent doesn't have to be in Northeast Ohio to be a Cleveland Clinic provider. In fact, that's how we're viewing it today. The pandemic, if there are any silver linings, it's accelerated a lot of the future that we knew was coming, but may have taken a decade to get here in terms of virtual health and telehealth and all of these things. Rapidly accelerated all of those areas to now where we can tap talent no matter where they are, and they can provide care to patients, because that's what we're really all about, is care to patients, and finding the best talent that we possibly can. And we're being very intentional about all of these things. It's a major part of our initiative going forward.
Great. Thank you for that. We had a question that I'll throw out. It was in the chat. And since I work in the area of diversity and inclusion every day in each of your areas, I'd be interested both in the question, which was around which companies are focusing on cultural diversity as a part of their inclusion efforts. And then also, from any of you who may have some perspective or stories of any challenges for either the refugees, the immigrant recruitees, our new citizens that you might want to share. Who wants to take it?
I think I can share, again, this is Scott, that from a cultural perspective, I know that our Office of Diversity and Inclusion have very successful employee resource groups around a number of different areas. And they're very focused on reaching out into the communities and the cultures that thrive there. Another major area, and Dr. Nizar Zain is the head of Global Patient Services for Cleveland Clinic, is on the board of Global Cleveland, I believe now. And under Dr. Zain, the Global Patient Services, I mean, the numbers of supports available for patient care, because one of the interesting things is Cleveland Clinic, we attract patients and we treat patients from all 50 states and from 135 different countries come to Cleveland for care. So to be able to support that and to support language barriers and cultural barriers, religious barriers, or challenges, that's what Global Patient Services is forefront of helping. And also, building the support structure to be able to provide Cleveland Clinic level care to people from all over the world. Like I said, 135 different countries come to Cleveland, which is not a well-known fact, but it is. And and Dr. Zain is leading that effort right now. So there's a lot of that intentional cultural support structure happening, certainly at Cleveland Clinic.
I can say that from at Ulmer and Berne, we have had a diversity effort, diversity and inclusion effort for several years, at least since I arrived here, which was about 3 years ago. and I've been enthusiastically a part of that effort, the Diversity Inclusion Committee. This year, with the tragic murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others, we have been meeting in a much more intense way, taking stock, of ourselves at the firm, of how is our hiring been, what kind of activities have we as a firm engaged in the community, what vendors do we use? I mean, all the way down, just a reevaluation. And I think, I'm, as a partner here, I'm very proud of that effort, but I'm hoping that's kind of an effort that's the norm, because we do have in this country systemic racism, and it is up to all of us to make sure that that we get beyond that we move beyond the problems in this country and take advantage. And look, I do diversity also for a living. It's what I do. And I see strength. I see strength in immigration. I see strength in people coming from all over the world with different ideas and tapestry of different cultures. It's just amazing when you think about, the kinds of dress, the restaurants, the art, the culture that's brought into a place like Cleveland because of our immigration history, whether it's the Eastern European communities, the African American community, the Ethiopians that are here, the Jewish community. I don't mean to leave anyone out, but it's amazing. It's what makes this city kind of an amazing place because of that tapestry of different cultures and different backgrounds.
And I think also from the refugee perspective, coming from the other side on the diversity and inclusion, the refugee population isn't a monolithic group, and most of the people coming to the United States and who've been resettled by USCRI and the other resettlement agencies in Cleveland, they weren't always refugees, right? And they're coming and they're people with agency, and they're coming with a background of skills and schooling that maybe, as Scott said, that we don't have here in the US, but they are people who bring a lot to the table and, are willing to work. So, and we, one of our programs at USCRI is working with employers in Cleveland to match new arrivals and other clients with employers, and we've had such an incredible partnership with so many of the employers in Cleveland, like Cleveland Clinic and UH and National Safety Apparel and so on. And just to see companies really just reaching out to us and wanting to make sure that refugees have jobs, and knowing that they are such dedicated and hard workers. It's really great to see that, and just seeing how people really are putting, walking the walk and not just talking the talk when it comes to diversity and inclusion in the workplace.
Thanks, Abby and David. I was going to add to your comments about Ulmer and Berne. I saw a recent announcement of some of the things your committee has decided to take action with, and send a note to a couple of your committee members congratulating you. So I have been over to speak to the group and had a chance to work with them, and do some work with a couple of your attorneys there from time to time as well. So if we can ever help you on that journey, don't hesitate to reach out and ask. Joann, have you, we're talking a little bit about the inclusion, the lack of inclusion, or the cultural fit for immigrants who are coming in. Do you hear from those people that you're out meeting with and helping through the process, some of the either challenges or good stories that they might share with you?
Sure. There are pockets in the Cleveland area of immigrant populations, and sometimes they do the sprawl out of the city into the suburbs also. But I understand this. People of likeness, culturally like to stick together in the same community because they're able to support each other better. Totally get that. My parents were the same way and still are. And so when I go out to the communities, it's very targeted to their audience, whether it be, from Ukraine or from Bhutan. it's a different culture of where they've come from or what trauma they may have suffered in the past. So there's definitely some sensitivity with them, but they do like to pocket with each other within their communities, which is understandable again.
Thanks. There's a question that sort of ties to that, which was directed to you about the training for the staff at U.S. Citizens and Immigration Services. Can you talk about that in terms of the welcoming nature, or how does your organization approach that? So you're giving a good message to people who are applying.
Right. So one of the main goals of my position is to show people that we do have a nice space out there. I understand, I've been to some events like with the Mexican consulate, and people are very, not scared, but scared to come up and talk to me about anything. And I always tell people, you know, I'm here to give information to you. I'm not here to take from you or give your name to someone else. That's not my job. My job is just to inform the community and give them information that could be useful to them. And it could be off the wall questions, or it could be common questions that are always asked too. And then for internal training, we have trainers that come in to talk about diversity and inclusion. We do have like a working group at work for diversity and inclusion. And then just recently we had a training regarding like subconscious biases and how to overcome those. So I think everyone across the nation is striving to move past any kind of stereotypes and just know people are people, and we should all come together to that peak, you know.
Thank you. So Abby, you talk about refugees, and you mentioned some of the experiences that they might be coming from. I think David mentioned that as well. It would seem that this is more than just an immigration path when you're talking about someone who may be trying to escape something else and make a new home here. Are there any particular things that your organization tries to do to help bridge that gap?
Sure, we do, and we definitely work with the other resettlement agencies here in Cleveland. You know, it takes a village to support people. It's, you know, while people may be resettled through us, you know, we really rely on just like a whole host of services throughout the community and so many other community organizations. You know, as you mentioned, you know, people are coming from, you know, they've seen a lot, and when you talk to people, you can tell that. And you know, sometimes it manifests itself early on, or it does it, you know, 15, 20 years down the line. It's something that they always live with. So we have a number of programs in place that we provide refugees who might need some additional and intensive case management. We have a program called the Preferred Communities. We also work with you know, Catholic Charities, for example. They have a really great victims of torture program, and so they, you know, showing us how to screen for victims of torture, and then also, you know, connecting them with the necessary services that they need to help you know, learn to cope with that. You know, we work really closely, for example, with the Neighborhood Family Practice, which is an incredible medical service provider that does have a specific kind of refugee arm, and just really trying to, again, like connect people to those services, you know, as they go on their journey. And one of the things that we are always trying to do is helping people get to self-sufficiency, and dealing with that trauma piece is such a huge part of it.
Thanks. You know, Scott, I was thinking as I'm listening to this conversation, especially when we start to talk about diversity and inclusion, there's this, I guess it's both a national and sometimes can be a local tension between, do we need to go elsewhere to find talent? Can't we put the people to work here? Cleveland's one of the poorest cities in America. And I do understand, you know, in the recruitment you're doing, you're looking for some very specialized skills. But do you hear that?
You know, yeah, absolutely. And I do know, and again, I think it's not my area. I'm not part of human resources, but I know within human resources and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, our community relations people, there's a tremendous amount of activity and really positive linkages being forged between Cleveland, and they have been. It's not brand new because of all of today's current unrest. Cleveland Clinic's been doing it for a long time, but it's been amped up, you know, about going out and building relationships with the communities in which Cleveland Clinic resides. You know, we're right in the middle of some of the poorest areas in Cleveland. And so the neighborhoods all around us, they've been very intentional. I know HR and ODI have been very intentional about building linkages with the communities and employing local people, many of whom can walk to work if we can employ them right there. And I know they've been very successful at that. And I know that the leadership there is very, very serious about taking that and just really growing that. So I think that's, you know, that thought is front and center with leadership of Cleveland Clinic. So I know that they're going to continue that, and it's going to just get bigger and bigger. You know, for physician talent, you know, our pool is everywhere. You know, there just isn't enough pool of talent in Cleveland for us to just tap the local market, right? We're recruiting from everywhere. But for everyone else, yeah, absolutely, you're spot on.
David, some of that thinking is probably behind some of the challenges in the rulings and myriad of things that you talked about. You know, can't we put our own people to work first? We don't need to have more people coming from elsewhere. So that's on a big macro level. But then here in town, you know, you've got Hispanic and Black poverty, unemployment, underemployment at the same time. And you know, I hear it in the work that I do, and we have a great relationship with Global Cleveland, but it hasn't always been, sometimes it's been, you know, a view of scarcity, and the pie is small, so we got to hold on to this so that others don't take it. And what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know, regardless of who is writing these studies, and I'm going to talk for a bit on a macro level, whether it's the Cato Institute on the right or the Center for American Progress on the left, center left, American Immigration Council, Brookings, a lot of these think tanks that look at these issues of economics and immigration, all of the credible studies show that immigrants raise the gross domestic product, that they make the communities, they raise employment in the communities, they raise the economic standard of living. Why is that? Immigrants tend to come to this country, tend to own their own homes at a faster rate, own their own business. They are net job creators. You know, Scott talks about, say, some of these physicians that come into the Cleveland Clinic. And I might point out that, you know, in situations where we're bringing folks in, whether it's a highly skilled physician or whether it's an IT person or whether it's a finance person, we have to undergo, in most cases, unless the person is a superstar, you know, extraordinary ability, we have to undergo a very rigorous labor department test in which the company that's sponsoring them has to show that there's no available U.S. worker. So U.S. workers come first in terms of hiring and in terms of bringing folks in. The law is very strict on this. The Department of Labor will not let a company go forward. I don't care whether it's a mom and pop store or whether it's the Cleveland Clinic or Mayo Clinic, will not let them go forward with sponsoring an immigrant unless they can show that they've looked first for a U.S. worker who's minimally qualified for the job. In other words, the law is designed to protect U.S. workers, and it does. It does. I mean, I don't like to advise clients, you can't move forward with this now, but I'll do it. And I've done it more times than I care to, because the clients aren't usually happy. I mean, the companies, but it is what it is. So the law does protect U.S. workers. But from a policy perspective, if we had, we haven't gotten into this topic because it's a whole nother panel, but everybody knows there's about 10.5 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. Half of those people came to the United States originally on visas and overstayed their visas. Half of them came in without an inspection, meaning they came in at the southern border, or they came in at the northern border, or they came in somehow with a false passport somehow. But they're here. And we have this talk that's been going back and forth for the better part of the last 20 years of whether we should reform the immigration system and give those folks a pathway to earn citizenship. And it's a hot button issue. It's going to be a hot button issue until it's solved, because it raises all kinds of passions in folks. My parents came here legally, or whatever. Wait in line. I mean, I could get into all that stuff, but the bottom line is the studies that have looked at immigration reform, Brian, all of them say that if we reform the immigration system and give the undocumented workers a pathway to earned citizenship, I'm not saying, give anybody anything, earn citizenship, that we will raise the GDP in this country, and the numbers are enormous. So it's a net gain. Immigration has always been a net gain. And you can't look at it, it's easy to say, okay, an immigrant's coming to Cleveland, so she's going to steal my job. The reality is that, and the U.S. Department of Labor speaking, not me, Bureau of Labor Statistics, their studies show that immigrants come in basically in two flavors, right? The folks that are coming, that Scott is bringing in over the clinic, these folks are highly trained, highly educated folks who are coming in to do brain surgery or whatever they're coming in to do. On the other side of the spectrum, you've got also highly skilled people coming in to work, let's say in Painesville, in the nurseries or in the fields, jobs that I can't do. And in the middle are the rest of us. Most of us have a college degree or a high school degree or maybe an advanced degree. So what I'm saying is, what the Department of Labor is saying is that they're not, the average American worker is not competing with the immigrants. You're not going to hire me at the Cleveland Clinic to do brain surgery, believe me. And you're probably not going to hire me. I'm probably not going to be running out to Painesville to take a job at a nursery, doing that hard work in the fields. So, and that's, most of us are there. So we're not really competing with immigrants for jobs. It's very specious and very easy to say, oh, well, they're coming here to steal our jobs, when the reality is they're creating jobs. And if you don't, I get where people might say, well, he's just saying that. Go to the American Immigration Council website, council spelled like city council, American Immigration Council. They have some phenomenal studies on this. Go to the website of the Cato Institute. Nobody's going to call the Cato Institute a left-wing institute. It's right-wing. Look at their studies. They say the same thing. The numbers vary a bit in terms of gross domestic product, but the result is the same, and that's that immigrants are a net benefit. And here in Cleveland, the way I look at it is this: we bring job creators into this town, and they will create jobs for our American workers. I give you an example of, let's say, an investment visa. And I'm not talking about the $1 million investment. I'm talking about a lower level investment visa. It's a great visa, and a lot of people use it to come in here and create businesses. And those businesses hire U.S. workers. Who else are they going to hire? They hire U.S. workers. They create jobs. And that's really how you kind of have to think of immigration. It's a job creating mechanism. And it always has been, and it always will be. And unfortunately, it's an easy target for those who really want to gain political power by spreading fear. It's always been that way. I mean, in the beginning part of the century, it was the Polish, it was the Jews, it was the Italians that were coming here and stealing jobs. You know, and that changes over time. And now we're focused, the rhetoric is focused on brown people coming in over the southern border. So it changes, but it's roughly the same. And it's always proved wrong. And it will prove wrong again. Immigrants are a benefit.
Yeah, that's a very strong message. And, you know, and I agree with you. All the studies say that it's a benefit. One of our kind of leading developers in town always said to me, wherever there was strong immigrant population, the economy was growing, and that's where he was developing. He would follow that as a trend in real estate.
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, we've got a few more minutes. I guess I'd like to open it up. Is there anything that either of you would like to learn about from the other, or dig deeper on a question? I'll give you a few minutes to think about that. I think this Abby, this was to either you or Joann. There was a great compliment on the work that you're doing from someone who's on the board of neighborhood family practice. So thank you, Christina, for that comment.
I can say, you know, I do a lot of work before the USCIS, and I have my issues, obviously, out of the Washington policy, but I will compliment the local office. I think that, you know, I've worked with Joann and others over there for many years, and they do a good job. And you really do get the feeling over there that they're trying to do good. I mean, we don't always agree, but I always get the feeling that folks who go over there, my clients have always gotten a fair shake over there. And you know, we're lucky in Cleveland that is a good office, and I do think that they really do care about the community, and the outreach, I think, is really admirable.
Great.
Appreciate that. And, you know, again, you know, us as an office, USCIS, we don't want people to feel afraid to come and ask us questions. You know, we're not an ICE office. We're not a police office. We're not an enforcement agency. We're a benefit agency. So I encourage people to seek advice, whether it be from USCIS or the council of some sort, to get that done. And we are trying as an agency to be more transparent to the public too. You know, our fees are changing October 2nd. It's been pretty transparent through media releases, policy memos that have come out to the public, Federal Register notices. We're constantly doing, yes, go ahead, David.
No, I was going to say that was enjoined yesterday. The fee rule was enjoined.
What was that?
It was stopped by the federal courts yesterday, so I don't think it's going to take effect on the 2nd.
The fee? Okay, thank you. So FYI, you know, people who send their stuff, it may be rejected, and then you'll have to show us proof that it was rejected wrong. But going in the future, sometimes things aren't smooth, obviously, on either end. But again, you know, I in particular am here to support this community and get people in touch to where they need to get in touch with.
Thanks. We've got just a couple minutes left, and so I'm going to turn to Abby first, and then you, Scott, if you have any closing comments that you'd like to make.
Sure. I mean, thanks again to Global Cleveland and to you, Brian, for moderating such an amazing panel, and thanks to the panelists. You know, on the refugee and immigration front, I mean, I will say for USCRI, it's been an interesting couple of years, and it will be a very interesting year ahead. And I think, you know, one of the things that, you know, just to think about is, you know, to support refugees and immigrants, it definitely takes a whole community. And, you know, we are so thankful for all of our partners. And just to know that, you know, refugees, you know, and immigrants, you know, they do make Cleveland what it is. And we're so lucky to be able to be in Cleveland and to be providing these services and working with, you know, everyone here.
Great. Thank you. And Harriet Russell's been leaving lots of comments in the chat. So Harriet, you should try to follow up. There's some meetup capability and networking capability, and all the information on our panelists is available. Scott, any final comments?
No, I mean, I think that the only thing I would say is, I was late in life to the cultural awakening. I mean, my time in Abu Dhabi years ago, I grew up in a very homogeneous suburb of Pittsburgh with no cultural awareness whatsoever. And it took me literally leaving the country and living somewhere else to understand what that meant. And, and I thank Cleveland Clinic and my time in Abu Dhabi really for opening my eyes to the rest of the world. And if you're lucky to have your eyes opened that way, it's easier to keep them open. I worry there's just so many people that grew up like me who never had that experience, and how do we reach them? And I think all the people on this panel are doing that. And that's why, I applaud what all of you guys are doing every single day. I think it's phenomenal.
Great, thanks, Scott. And I share that with you as well. The awakening that we're having in our country really around racial inequities, but also around just equity and inclusion generally. Boy, it's about time. And, if you are fortunate enough to travel outside of the country, you both appreciate when you get back home and you come through immigration and you're back in the good old US of A, but you enjoy that you've had the chance to see and experience something else. And I hope that opens up, we can open up our eyes to have some of those experiences here, the cultural things that you could do here in Cleveland, to sort of visit the world right here, the cultural gardens, or some of the other ethnic things that we can do. So I'm going to close with thanking you all first and foremost for being a great group of panelists and the great information. And I'm happy that I had the chance to learn from you all today. I want to thank our sponsors again, Platform Brewery, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Supply Side Group, Ulmer and Berne, the Rotary Club of Cleveland, Eaton, Taiwan Sister Cities, CIP USA, Margaret Wong and Associates, Team Neo, Peace Corps, and 12 Literary Arts. I want to thank all of our audience for listening in and remind you all that you can network. You can join the reception area. You can go into other rooms to interact. So make sure you get the most out of this. And the last thing I'll say, because I didn't get this in, Scott, just like I complimented Ulmer and Berne, we've been delighted to work with the clinic as well on construction diversity, supplier diversity, organizational diversity. I could name 5 people over there that work with our team at the Greater Cleveland Partnership. And so you guys are walking the walk as well as talking the talk. And thank you for that. So with that, we'll close this session.